Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Kate. And tonight I'm so happy to introduce to you my friend and colleague, Tasneem Noor. Welcome, Tasneem.
Yay, good to be with you, Kate.
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm very, very happy about it. And I'm happy for all of you who have tuned in tonight because you're going to just meet an amazing, gosh, I think I would call you a faith influencer among many other things. And we're going to talk about those things tonight, your interfaith work, your life coaching, the way that you help people in the world undertake courageous conversations across difference and in celebrating that difference. But first of all, I want to just find out my first question that I ask every guest, and that is, are you a native Angelino?
Not at all. Ever since I've moved to the United States, I'm a native Angelino. I haven't lived anywhere else. But before that it goes back to other countries.
Yeah.
Well, first thing first, just really grateful to be here. So good to see you. We have had some amazing conversations in the past. So when you invited me, I was like, of course. The only difference is I get to have this conversation with the rest of your audience as well. So hello to them too.
And by the way, in the chat is a wonderful fellow named Jonathan Simkoski who lives at Abrahamic House. And he says,
nice.
Hi, Tasneem. Yeah.
Yay. Hi. I can't see chats. I don't know if I'm supposed to.
Don't bother. It'll just distract you. I see chat.
Perfect. I'll follow your lead and just
follow my lead.
Have fun with you.
Absolutely. So what happened before you moved to Los Angeles?
Well, so my mom is from Pakistan. That's where I was born in Karachi, but my dad is from India. And it's part of tradition where the woman, when they're expecting, they move back to the maternal family and they give birth there, and then they go back to their husband's house or wherever they live. And so in this case, born in Karachi, but early childhood years in India. We then moved to Dubai, United Arab Emirates, for about 7 years. I was there from 2nd grade through 6th grade, a little bit give and take. And then my brother
That's
actually
a long
fell
time.
down. Yeah. My brother fell down, just a regular walk inside the house, but a bad one that resulted in even worse conditions because his leg was plastered wrong. And we didn't
Mm.
even know at that time. We were just, hopeful everything would heal, everything would be fine. And so when we left Dubai for Pakistan, we just thought, we might stay a few days extra, a few weeks longer until my brother gets okay, and then we'll come back.
Mm.
And that ended up being 3 years in Pakistan.
Mm.
And then we just couldn't go back to Dubai. Um, my brother is still on a wheelchair,
Mm.
and the immigration laws in Dubai, at least at that time, were really weird. It was like you couldn't be, they wouldn't extend your visa if you were a man and over 21, if you were not working full time or going to school full time.
Oh.
Yeah. So my brother
So
was just
that's
at that
so,
cusp, you
yeah.
know.
And so, so you were in Pakistan as you were hoping that he would still be recovering. But it
Exactly,
sounds like
exactly.
it must have been
It did.
such a freak accident, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit more complicated than just a
Mm-hmm.
fall. The fall is
Mm.
what created the fracture, which then brought him on the wheelchair. But he was born with like some muscular weakness. So
Mm-hmm.
once he was, in the plaster, it just kind of kept getting worse. So a healthy person like you and me,
Mm.
I've had a
Mm-hmm.
fracture. After
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks, you do a little bit of exercise and you're back to
Mm-hmm.
normal. So he just
Yes.
wasn't able to sprint back to that level, and it just went
Mm-hmm.
the other direction. So we
So let's
were
see
in
if
a
I've got it right then.
situation.
Pakistan to India to Dubai to Pakistan so far, right?
Yes.
But backing
And
up a little bit, I'm interested in this idea that your dad was from Pakistan and your mom was from India, or is it the other way around?
the other
The
way
other way
around.
around. Is that unusual for people to fall in love across those two cultures?
Well, the answer would depend on who you're talking.
Mm-hmm.
If you want my dad's version of the story, it was of
Okay.
course love. And if you want my mom's side of the story, it was arranged.
Oh, that's so
so
funny.
so I enjoy both versions of the story and just
Yeah.
celebrate their love. It is more complicated. There are definitely fewer weddings, even in my family, that are
Mm.
between across countries because
Mm.
it creates problems, and it definitely created problems in our case as well. But the families were happy. It wasn't like they're the same religion, everybody
Mm-hmm.
knew everybody, so there were no controversy. But it
Yeah.
was definitely like, are you sure you want to go to India? You know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. And I've been reading all about you, and wasn't
Oh
there
my
some sort of
goodness.
connection between one of your grandparents and Gandhi?
Yes, so I have an amazing family. So my dad's side of the family is very or was very affluent Muslim family.
Mm-hmm.
And so they worked hand in hand with Gandhiji and all the other freedom fighters around the independence. And so
Mm.
my grandfather was one of, like, right when Gandhiji's funeral, he was one of the people who spoke at his, yeah. So it was a very, very close relationship in that regard.
Mm.
And the interfaith work, which we'll get to in a moment, but it's
Mm.
in my blood, So at that time it was
Yeah.
Hindu Muslim.
Yes.
That was a big deal. So from great grandfather to grandfather onwards to me.
Yeah, and absolutely in your blood. Um, that's fascinating, and all part of your family history. And so, how did you all decide to leave Pakistan for the U.S.?
So it sounds dramatic, but it was complicated and it was hard. So when we were in Pakistan, my dad was actually still in Dubai. So he
Mm-hmm.
never moved. It was just my mom, my sister, brother,
Mm-hmm.
and I. My grandmother was there. We had more family support, more financial
Mm-hmm.
support. So that's why we were in Karachi. And we were in a situation where we couldn't go back to Dubai as a family because of the
Mm-hmm.
visa stuff. We couldn't, there were problems with living in India and there were problems in living in Pakistan. And to be frank, my dad didn't want to live in Pakistan and my mom didn't want to live in India. So there were the issues. And then
Which was
there
why
was,
Dubai worked
you know,
so well, right? Dubai worked so well because it
exactly.
was neutral territory.
Exactly, exactly.
Aw.
And it was close enough so
Mm-hmm.
my dad could visit his parents whenever they called. My mom, we used to go for summer vacations to Pakistan every year. But we
Mm-hmm.
were in a situation where we couldn't live in any of those countries we had called home any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my brother's treatment was a big consideration. So
Yeah.
that's how we came to LA, just
Mm-hmm.
hoping he would have a better life. We had some family over here as well, and they were
Mm-hmm.
very supportive and just, letting us crash at their place while we were uncertain of which way are
Yeah.
we going to go or what are we going to do.
So you
Yeah.
were, I think you were just in your early teens at that point, weren't you?
Yes, yes. I was 15
Mm-hmm.
and it was January 1st, 2000.
Oh
So
my
a
gosh.
new millennium, literally,
Yes.
new
New
country, new
country,
start.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Do you remember what it felt like to be your 15-year-old self at that moment, sort of thinking about arriving here?
Yeah. I would say two things. Everything, I'd been to America once before when
Mm-hmm.
I was 6-ish years old, so I had
Mm-hmm.
very random memories. But coming here, I was just enveloped with family. We
Yeah.
had my cousins, my uncles and aunts, my parents, my brother, my sister. I can't imagine moving to a country without family.
Mm-hmm.
So having come with family to family made everything a lot easier. It didn't feel as
Yeah.
foreign. It didn't feel as, you
Absolutely.
know, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I can completely imagine. Yeah, because a family, I know that feeling well from all the places that I lived with my family growing
yeah,
up, that you've got this unit, and so you're never, it's not as alienating that way. At least until you
exactly.
make your own friends and begin to sort of expand the circle.
Yes, yes. I will tell you that as a teenager, I think one of my biggest concerns was what am I going to wear? Because
Oh,
before
that's
coming here,
every teenager's concern.
yes, but for me, it felt even, I don't know, maybe it was just me and therefore it felt multiplied. But I'd never worn like jeans, shirts, like Western clothes before.
Right.
I loved skirts, so I'd worn some skirts, but that was about it. And so I
Did you
was
tend to
very
wear like
nervous.
shalwar kameez? Is that what you were wearing?
Exactly. Yes. Similar
To
to
me,
actually
that's
what I'm wearing right
actually
now.
that's what you're wearing right now. To me, that's
Yes.
that's actually the perfect clothing. It's like whoever invented that, they designed the perfect clothing. You know,
Yes.
I always
It's,
love how it looks, and I love how women wearing a shalwar kameez will also have the scarf and
yeah.
and constantly rearranging it on their. I find that so gorgeous. I don't know why.
I love it. I enjoy it. My
Mhm.
sister hates it though, so she'll usually leave the stall.
Oh no,
She's
that's
like,
the
this
best
is too
part.
bothersome. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what did you
But
do? Did you buy jeans, or did you stick with more of your traditional clothing? What did you do?
so one of my cousins, or three of my cousins, same, tribe, they lived in London. So and she's the same age as me, and they came over or were here I forget, but she was my guru. Like whatever she said you can wear, I wore. And at that time in London, they had these pants that had skirts attached to them. So they were like, they would cover your behind and your hips. And that was important to me. So even though I didn't wear I don't cover my head and, I'll wear shorter sleeves, it was still important for me to be modest. So finding
Yeah.
that way to kind of fit in while keeping to my own parameters was an interesting navigation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's such a challenge. Were you going to an American high school as well, or to an Islamic school, or?
We always went to an English medium school, and
Hmm.
that pretty much both in Dubai and in Pakistan meant British system.
Hmm.
So it was
Hmm.
the O levels, A levels is what we
So
did.
by the time that you had come to the United States, you'd done your O levels already, right?
No, I was so happy.
You
I didn't
didn't
have
have to
to
do it.
I didn't have to give those exams. They're like a
Oh my
3-year
gosh.
equivalent exams for
I know
all
about
the
the O levels. I had to
subjects.
take them when I was living in
Oh,
Botswana when I was that age, and I had to do O levels.
wow.
But I was
Power
glad to
to
escape
you.
A levels. A levels are way too hard.
Oh my goodness. My sister did both. So I was happy that I came here and I
Yeah.
just missed it.
Nice work. Nice work. So where did you
Yes.
go to school? For where did you
Um,
go to secondary school? Here.
Culver City High School.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did, so going to high school was a blur. It was
Yeah.
literally like I was there for 2 years and I didn't know anything, like back in India, Pakistan, Dubai, all of it was very disciplined. The teachers came to you when they would come, you stand up and say, "Good morning, sir," or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
that. And there was pretty much, they would lecture, you take notes, you do homework, give the tests. That was school. And then I came
Yeah.
here and you didn't really have too many choices. In the schools I went, there weren't too many extracurricular activities, so that was school. And when I
Mm-hmm.
came here, they said, "Oh, you have to go meet a counselor." I said, "Oh," I didn't say anything, but in my head, I'm like, "Why am I meeting a counselor?" Like
Did you
I
think it
thought
was
at
like a
that time.
therapist?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't
Oh,
know any of that lingo. So I went
right.
with my parents, and my parents are sitting there, I'm sitting there, and for the first time, the counselor says hello to all three of us. And then he looks at me and says, "So, what classes would you like to take?" And I'm just totally shocked because,
Yeah.
first of all, why isn't he talking to my parents?
Right.
Second of all,
That's
why is he
crazy. Yeah.
asking me? And third of
Yeah.
all, I have choices. I had,
Yeah.
like, yes, it was a completely different system, but
So
I loved it.
strange.
I
Yeah.
loved it.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then and then once you're in the classroom, there's none of that.
Mm,
I remember when I was in Botswana in secondary school even, you'd be getting a lecture and you'd be taking notes, and then the
yeah.
teacher would say, rule off, which means we'd have to draw a line at the bottom of the page. It meant that
Uh-huh.
that was done. I mean, like that level of
Yeah.
instruction, like
Yes.
and they would inspect our pencil boxes to make sure that we had all the right supply. It was so
Yes.
different, so different. Oh my
Totally.
gosh!
Very
So you were
different.
here, and you got accustomed to life here.
I think my conscious growing up has been here. So high
Hmm.
school, I think in high school I just absorbed.
Hmm.
I was still very shy and reserved. I didn't ask too many questions, but I was very observant. So
Hmm.
I understood cues and I did saw what
Hmm.
others were doing and I would follow along. Um, and so I applied for SATs and all of those kinds of things. I applied for university, got into some
Hmm.
Cal States, but it still felt like a blur, like I was just
Mm-hmm.
going through. So I
Yeah.
was really happy that I got to go to Santa Monica College.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gave me the breathing space to kind of be like, okay, you have choices. What choices do you really want to make? And I
Mm.
think that's where I started coming into my own
Mm.
identity, because I think another big shift for me was that before coming here, my relationships really defined me. I was
Mm-hmm.
a daughter, I was a sister, I was a student, I was this, niece, a friend. I didn't really have a sense of who I
Mm.
was as a
Mm.
person. And I think
Mm.
being in the environment in college and everyone asking you questions and you having to step up and lead projects and, write essays on what you actually think about
Yeah.
that topic, it all encouraged me to kind of find my own voice. And so I'm really grateful
Mm.
for all of that. And then
You know, sometimes
UCLA.
I think that that's the most important thing that we gain from college is that
Yes.
is that's I think that's really where we go to find out who we are,
Mm-hmm.
to begin
I
to
think
find out
so
who we
too.
are. Yeah.
Exactly. I loved it.
Yeah, I'm so
Um,
glad. That's
yeah.
wonderful. So what did you end up majoring in?
English. Imagine that.
English. Perfect. I love it.
Yes. Yes. That was my bachelor's. And then my master's is in education, in higher
Mm.
education, student affairs.
Mhm.
So I love the college environment so much. I was like, why would I want to work anywhere else? So that was
Yeah.
my incentive for going into student affairs. And I couldn't imagine myself behind the podium, meaning
Mhm.
the classroom. I wouldn't know what to teach if I was a teacher, and that too day in and day out. But
Mhm.
just interacting with people, helping them be more aware, helping them push themselves the way I pushed myself,
Mm.
getting to know themselves. I think college is where you really get to explore and experiment with lesser, with fewer risks, you know?
It sounds like one of the things you were learning in college is that you are a leader,
Yeah.
and maybe you didn't know that going in.
Nope. I'll share with you, so when I got to Santa Monica College, I wanted to be more involved and engaged. So
Mhm.
I joined the newspaper. I was a writer, became the managing editor, joined the student government, was like a commissioner, so like a supportive role, not an elected officer. And then one of the student officers, she was like, "So, what are you doing next year?" I said, "I don't know." And she
Mhm.
was like, "Why don't you run for elections?" And I said, "Me? I don't know what you're talking about. Who would vote for me?" And that is really the question that had me begin exploring, am I a leader? How am I a
Mhm.
leader? And I thought leaders were people behind the podiums, the ones who spoke with the microphone. And
Mhm.
then I was talking to my sister and I was saying all this, like, I'm really good with organizing, I'm good with supporting, I'm good with listening, but I'm not a leader. And she said, there are different types of leaders. And then
Mhm.
I had my favorite counselor also in college. Her name was Cecile Hanrahan. She was like, "Do you think she's a leader?" I said, "Yeah, of course she's a leader." And she said, "Well, isn't she helping people? Isn't she like, she's not at
That's
the podium?"
amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
part of it is that the cultural image of leader is is that sort of splashy, you know,
Yeah.
big personality, But like you're saying, that's only one kind of leader.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I mean, I've seen you lead. It's amazing how you work a room.
Oh,
I
thank
mean, it's like, it's
you.
amazing. It's like the whole room is just this energy field, and everybody is being sort of heard and connected, and every word that you use is like a perfect, I don't know, it's amazing. You definitely came into your powers. And I
Thank
think probably some
you.
of it is that
Thank
you
you.
realized that truth about
Yes.
yourself, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
I
it
think
started at Santa Monica College, but how did you continue to come to realize that this was a big gift of yours?
I just took one step at a time, and I was just driven by what I loved. And at that time, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even know what I loved. I think the motivation was um, I just wanted to make a positive impact. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
that studying, I was fine in my studies. I got good grades and everything, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
where I felt engaged. That's not where I felt like I was making a difference or I was learning. I learned when I was with people. And I just loved that interaction so much that
Mm, mm,
I kept pushing myself to. So I did run
mm,
in the student elections,
mm-hmm.
and asking people to vote for me was just the most crazy, like, what?
Mm-hmm.
How? you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember the first day was like a 3-5, like a week long election. And so the first day I was part of a slate, I had all the flyers and I just stand there timidly waiting for someone to come and, ask for a flyer. And then I'd give them a flyer with a smile. And
Uh-huh.
then the second day I got a little bit like, okay, let
Mm-hmm.
me, extend my
Mm-hmm.
hand a little bit more. And by the end of it, I was really happy and proud that there was a particular time when, someone's like, oh, I'm busy, I don't have time, like, would you mind if I walk with you? And I
Mm-hmm.
literally walked with that person to their class,
Mm-hmm.
talking to them, just getting to know them, saying, vote for us, this is why it's
Uh-huh.
important. And we have another guest, yay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was looking
adorable.
for trouble, so I'm just holding him. That's
Thank
amazing. So
you.
in one week, you transformed from into a real campaigner, it sounds like.
A little bit. I will say I still don't enjoy it, but that experience
Mm-hmm.
taught me that if I really want to and if I really have to, I can. And I can
Mm-hmm.
do it effectively and I can do it in my own way without being aggressive or being,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
anybody else. So that's, I think, the biggest lesson of that moment.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So there you were at Santa Monica. You graduated. You got your master's in education, and then how did you find your way into your life's work? Is there a
Well,
moment when is there another turning point that you can sort of remember when you suddenly thought,
well,
you know what? This is this thing that I do.
I think so. So I was pretty invested in the student affairs track. I was working in Cal State
Mm-hmm.
LA. I worked there with the student government for 5 years, and I loved it. I loved the
Mm-hmm.
students. I loved the campus. I loved the work. It was fun. It was good. But at some point, something felt missing, and so I was just started looking for what is that something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And there were two moments in particular that I think was like, okay, this theme, there is something more than just going on the student affairs track.
Mm-hmm.
One was I was at a conference, it was called the Dream Builder
Mm.
conference
Oh
that, yeah, with Mary
yeah.
Morrissey. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah. So my sister had tickets and she was like, I think
Mm-hmm.
you'll like it. So I just showed up. She said, oh, she's personal development, but with a spiritual side
Mm-hmm.
to it. So I think you'll
Mm-hmm.
like it. So I knew nothing about Mary at that point. I didn't really know anything about coaching. I was going, at that moment, I was more like, okay, within student affairs, what can I do? And I was leaning towards doing more work with spirituality and or, faith and religion on campuses. And that's what I was looking into. But when I went to that conference, for the first time, I dared to dream. I dared to ask if there was no limitation, if there was no shoulding, if there was no right or wrong, what would I love? And that's when my vision just kind of expanded. And one thing that came up for me was that I wanted a better lifestyle balance between work and family life. I wasn't married, I'm still not married, but I was still anticipating, in my dream, it was like this perfect combination of doing amazing work in the community, being fulfilled. For me, doing that work is worship. So it would be spiritually rewarding while still being present with my family. And the lifestyle of student affairs work, especially the kind of work I was doing in student affairs, just didn't go together. So that's when I realized I needed to look at something different with a little bit more flexibility if I was really going to make that dream come true. So that's how I started in the coaching direction.
That's right. But I want to go back to
Yeah.
something that you said there that was so interesting, which is that your work at its best feels like worship.
Yeah.
Did you say that? Can you
Yeah.
say more about
Yeah.
that?
So it's just, there's a
I love
saying,
that.
yeah, there is this sense that our purpose of being born is to worship God. And that worship looks and feels different for different people. For some, it is praying every day, 5 times a day, reading the Quran, all of that. That's worship. But also how you live your life, how you use your gifts that you have been blessed by, that is also worship. And so for me, I was never ambitious about career and like from that place of I want the next level job or the next level pay grade or whatever. It was always this sense of I want to be better and do better because of God and through God and with God. And that's how I can be like I'm his creation, you know? So it's my job. If I love my creator, then I want to be the best creation I can be. Um, and more specifically, how that ties in with my work, there's a verse in the Quran that says, we created you from a single male and female into different nations and tribes so that ye may get to know one another.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah,
That's beautiful. I
yeah,
love that.
yes, yes,
Wow. That sounds to me like it might be almost your mission statement.
it is. It is. That's how I went into it. It's like just get to know one another. And it's my belief that when we do, goodness will come out of it. Innovations,
Yeah.
miracles, community, love, care,
And it
all the
all starts with
things.
the relationships. That's my belief
Yeah,
too. I love that.
yeah, yeah.
You worked with a group that brought Jewish and Muslim believers together. What was that one called? Something Ground?
Uh huh. New ground.
New Ground.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell me about that. I mean, can you
yeah.
describe like maybe the best way for us to understand it is maybe just tell us a story about a couple of people whose relationship sort of changed in the
Yeah,
midst of that.
yeah. So New Ground is that's the name, and it's a Muslim Jewish Partnership for Change. I did their fellowship back in 2009, 2010, and now I'm on staff with them part-time.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually facilitate and lead their 8-month programs where we focus on relationship building and teaching tools around conflict and how to approach conflict in a way that's constructive and
Mm-hmm.
actually helps to build relationships instead of looking the other way.
Yeah. Now, the reason that I'm especially interested in this at this particular moment
Yes.
is, because we're in this moment in the United States now where there's so
Yeah.
much division,
Yeah.
and I so often hear people say, "We're so different now. There's no way we'll ever be able to communicate or work together." That's the narrative
Yeah.
that sort of come has very much come forward.
Yeah.
And so, but you were working with people who one might say were much further apart in.
Yes. Yes.
So what's the hope? How does
So
it happen?
it happens. I think there are two things, or maybe three things, that are really important to make it happen. And then I will share with you a moment or two. One is who you are yourself. If you are strong in yourself, if you're grounded in yourself, if you don't feel threatened by the other person, just because they disagree with you or they think differently than you, then you can show up in a place with more authenticity and openness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, new ground, everyone is not ready for new ground. You have to be willing and wanting to engage in a way that is respectful of relationships and will stretch you. It is uncomfortable. It is work, and it is fun, and it is meaningful, and you come out of it with greater insight and greater awareness and greater sensitivity and greater skill. But all of that is on the other end of the discomfort. So you have to be
Okay, so you
willing.
have to be willing, and that already that sort of pre-selects a certain kind of
Yeah,
person, maybe.
yes. Having said that, though, I don't necessarily like the criticism of preaching to the choir criticism, which is very much the case with interfaith work. You hear that often. Especially in this context of where you're doing the relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, I'll share an example with you. We
Mm.
do sessions on Islam and Judaism, and then we get into Islamophobia and anti Semitism, and then we make our way to Israel and Palestine. So, this was a session on Islamophobia. And ironically enough, this was just after the San Bernardino shootings that happened.
Mm.
Like literally the next day is when we got together, Muslims and Jews, to talk about it. And we
Mm.
were sitting in a circle, and there was this one amazing Jewish lady, and she was like, I do all this work, inclusivity, creating spaces for people to come together. Um, I know you all now, so I know Muslims are not terrorists, and there's such richness and beauty in Islam. And I have to admit that when I see someone, saying Allahu Akbar and bombing something, I feel scared. And when I see other things in the media, like I find myself being scared and Islamophobic of Muslims. And
Mm.
she said that, and it was so powerful. It takes a lot of courage to be that vulnerable, right?
Mm.
To come out to your friends and say, FYI, your religion scares me and your people scare me. But
Yeah.
you guys are probably okay, That's scary to
Yeah.
say. And the way it was received by the Muslims was like, we feel you. Like, we see that
Mm-hmm.
and we feel scared, and that
Yeah.
humanizing and that sense of let's meet each other where we are is what allowed for us to really dig deeper into
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging our own biases and our own concerns and our own criticisms while still having the space to hear from the other person what
Mm.
their experience is. So that
Yeah.
willingness and courage is super powerful.
But it's the space that they were in, it seems,
Yeah,
that made it possible.
it's the relationships that make it
Mm-hmm.
possible. Like I, as a facilitator, and Andrea as my co-facilitator, we definitely do our part.
Mm-hmm.
I won't lie, we do a lot of work to be that intentional and
Mm-hmm.
to,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the relationships that start to
Yeah.
matter so much that then you are. So I'll share a different example with you,
Mm.
just from last year. Um, we were talking, and so we do interfaith work where Muslims and Jews are talking to each other, but it's also important to have intra-faith conversations
Mm-hmm.
where the
Mm-hmm.
Muslims can just come together and the Jews can
Mm.
have their own space. And so this was an intra-faith, and I was just pushing and checking to see where my Muslims were at, like,
Yeah.
are they really digging? Are they really
Mm-hmm.
pushing? What do they have in their heart and mind that they're not saying? And
Mm.
right, because we hold back, we still hold
Mm-hmm.
back even after all this. So there was this one particular person, and he was like, I feel very comfortable, with whatever is happening in FY. This is Israel Palestine. By this time, we have talked
Mm-hmm.
about that conflict and the complexities and the different emotions and the different
Mm-hmm.
narratives that are around it. He was like, I feel very comfortable in that, asking questions around it. I feel heard. But if I'm being honest, there are other questions that I don't want to ask. And I said, tell me more, like what? And he
Mm-hmm.
said, like media. I know there's some
Mm-hmm.
anti Semitic tropes, but I want to hear from the Jews to see, what is anti Semitic, what is not, and how they think about certain shows that I've seen that I think are fine, but maybe they're not. And I don't know how
Okay.
to ask them these questions without being so. Jews control the media, right? you know?
Right, right.
Yeah. And he was genuinely afraid of unknowingly stepping into a trope and
Mm-hmm.
saying something that would be hurtful to his friends,
A
you
trope
know?
trap.
Yeah, yeah. So
Interesting.
we had to work through that one, and they had the conversations, and it was really powerful.
So, something else that you do, and I'm wondering how it connects to your work with New
Mm-hmm.
Ground, is this whole area of what are called courageous conversations. Is that your
Yeah.
term, or is that a term in the field right now?
Well, when I thought of it, I thought, ooh, this is cool. This is my term. And then I Googled it, and it's
Darn
like
it.
a lot of people's term. Yes. So I can't say I came up with it, but I think for me, courageous convers. I was really like how to have uncomfortable conversations. The kinds that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, yeah.
That was my mission. Is if I'm gonna get to know you, Kate, I can't just be like, hey, tell me about your cat and tell me about your
Mm-hmm.
dog and tell me what you do. If I'm really going to get to know you, I want to know what you think and feel on different topics. I want to know what your values are. I want to know what grounds you. I want to know what motivates you. And depending on the context of these questions, it might be religious, it might be political, it might be
Mm-hmm.
social, it might be family, it might be mental health. Like, there's so many issues and topics out
Mm-hmm.
there that it can feel really vulnerable and uncomfortable to even initiate that conversation. So I was first playing with that term of uncomfortable conversations, difficult conversations. And then I was like, what does it take to really do it? And that's courage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where courageous conversations I thought was like, it's my concept.
Well,
but it's
you
not.
you independently invented it, right? I
There
mean,
you
it
go.
is yours. It's just some ideas are so brilliant that they
Yeah.
well, I want to hear more about it, but first I want to share with you a question from one of our beautiful parishioners, Comfort Obunamiri, and she asks, what
Hi.
additional things can individuals do to promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue? What can individuals do? I almost think Comfort's saying, how do you get to that deeper place in your relationships with other people?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example
Um,
from our church. Um,
yes.
uh, you know, uh, Pre-COVID, post-COVID, we have coffee hour, and
Yes.
everybody, we're so happy to be together across countries and cultures and gender and generations. But, it's chit chat, right? And that's
Yeah.
great. It's one part of community. It's just
Yeah.
enjoying each other and just kind of shooting the breeze, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think we all also hunger to really know each other better. So how do we get
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Great question and great quest as far
Yeah,
as
it's a
I'm,
quest. It
you
is a
know,
quest.
it is a quest. Um, I would say there are three things I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One is coming at it from a place of curiosity. So, whoever or whatever topic you want to engage, it's really important to carry that energy of curiosity. I think the reason why conversations get heated is because people are trying to convince one another of something or they feel threatened by one another. And so then their defenses shoot up, right? And so that's not a curious stand. That's a let me tell you what I think and you should, you know, agree with me because that's the right thing. So there is a
Mm-hmm.
place for debate. But the interesting thing is that even debates have a structure to it. And there is a
Mm-hmm.
part when you are putting your point forward, and then there's a part when you are listening. So that listening with curiosity in a relationship type of a thing is super duper important. The second thing that I found really helpful is naming your intention and being clear about your intention. So, for example, my intention of saying yes to this conversation was you're
Mm-hmm.
Kate, woohoo!
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious to see what would come out of it. But I
Mm-hmm.
could have had another intention. My
Mm-hmm.
intention could be that I want to get more involved with your church, and this would be
Mm-hmm.
my opening. My intention could have been that I have nothing better to do, and so, why not do this? My
Mm-hmm.
intention could have been that there is something specific I want to share with you and your audience and talk about that. This is a
Mm-hmm.
platform for me to talk about that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the intentions are endless. So it's really important to first identify and then name your intention, and particularly around difficult conversations. Um, you know, is your intention to understand? Is your intention to be heard or understood? Is your intention to explore something or to process something?
I think sometimes people's intention is to change other people's minds, right?
True, true.
But it doesn't have to be that, right? I,
It
I
doesn't
remember
have to be.
this feeling when I was in my early 20s where I thought my friends and I needed to think the same way. It was just like a primitive version of
Yeah,
me, where I
yeah,
just thought, but you have to see it the way I see it.
yeah, yeah.
And and I think as we get older, we start to kind of love that people see things differently than we do.
Yeah, but when it comes to something that's really close to your heart, like your religion, it can still be tough. So it is tough. Like so for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 200% okay with you thinking whatever your beliefs are around Jesus Christ, and praying to Him, and the
Mm-hmm.
services, because I respect your thing. But if you ask me, what do you think about Jesus? And then you want to
Mm-hmm.
convince me that no, Jesus is the Son of God,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
it's like questioning my beliefs and my I don't want to say right, but my space and right to kind
And
of have my own
integrity, and your own
integrity.
integrity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it can also be challenging. Like, if you really believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and I'm saying Jesus is a prophet and I respect him and I admire him, but he's not the Son of God, then
Mm-hmm.
it can touch that
Mm-hmm.
it can challenge you to the core.
Mm-hmm.
And that is sometimes painful, and sometimes we don't know how to sit with that pain. And that's when we know it challenges our own beliefs. So I think having your own way, and being clear about your own, like, how, what's my own process for my beliefs being challenged. That in itself is a conversation to be had. And
And that's
sometimes you
one
have
that
to have that conversation before you can have other conversations. Sorry.
interesting. I think we have that conversation with our parents, don't we, as we grow up, and if we have different ways of doing things than they do, that's
Yeah.
sort of an ongoing
Yeah.
conversation. Um,
Yeah.
you talked about sitting with the pain.
Mm.
Um, when the defenses go up, and people try to convince each other of something, I wonder if in a way they're trying to make the pain
Yes.
stop. They're trying to dampen it by
Mhm. Mhm.
by by the by
Mhm.
some sort of an aggressive
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
or defensive move. But I love
Yes.
this idea of sitting with the pain. But can you zero in on an example of, either for yourself or someone that you've worked with, and a moment when they were sitting with pain, and it was brave.
Mm.
Like, think about new
Well,
ground people and their conversations,
yeah,
or
I was curious. Well, I don't know if this will fly, but this is what's coming up. So this is what I'll share. And then there are a lot of new ground stories I can share,
mm,
and others as well. But so we are in an interesting time right now,
mm-hmm,
right? With a lot of division. There's a lot
mm-hmm,
happening at the Capitol and with the government
mm-hmm,
and all of that. And I had a conversation with someone who is against vaccinations. Like, I sought out this conversation, a courageous conversation. And it was like, I just want to understand, I just want to explore.
mm,
And there were two things that happened as a result of that conversation. One, it helped me to acknowledge my own biases and judgments, where I was clumping everyone who's against wearing masks and against vaccinations as those people, and clumping them in whatever those people are being clumped
yeah,
in as
you were
in the
othering
media.
them.
Yeah, I was othering them. And I was still curious with them, right? So
Mm,
by reaching out to this othered person, it helped me to realize that there's so many stories and there's so many
mm-hmm,
reasons why someone might be against vaccinations. And so it opened up that for me and helped me to not other and not judge, and to just have even more curiosity in my heart and not just in my mind. And the
that's a
other thing,
helpful example. Yeah.
yeah. And the other thing that came up for me from that conversation was that the one thing she said is, I don't want to convince everyone that I'm right. I went through my process. Like, she did a lot of research. She talked to a lot of people. She's trialed and tested. There was a lot of pain in her family from around vaccinations. So she did her work to reach a conclusion. And she's like, I want other people to do their work to reach whatever conclusion they reach, and that's fine. But she said the one thing that is not fine is when it's an infringement on my rights, you know? And that was a pain point for me, because I don't have an answer to that question of, and there's so many cases and situations of that, right? When I'm exercising my right, but somehow that is compromising on your right. So, for example,
Yeah.
smoking is that, like, I can choose to smoke, but then I shouldn't smoke around you because, hello, that's secondhand smoking, and maybe, you have health concerns or you don't like it. And so my decision and right shouldn't, but
Infringe on
how,
mine.
but then
But how do
yours
we,
shouldn't
yeah.
mine.
But when we live together in community, we're going to bump up against each other in those
Exactly.
ways. There's another
Exactly.
comment in the chat from Dr. Greg Dern. He's also in education, and he says
Hi.
it's possible that when people don't connect between their differences, they may feel rejection. How do you help others with the wounds of rejection? That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Because I think if we don't agree, it's very easy to feel judged by one another
Yes.
and hurt. That's
Yes.
pain. It's an example of the pain. It's
Yeah.
an example of sitting with the pain, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question again of what's
Yeah.
the
How do we help
rejection?
others with the wounds of rejection?
Wounds of rejection, yeah. To have all the answers, but this is my answer for now.
Okay.
And thank you for that question. It's definitely something I'll be sitting with moving forward. And I'm curious to know your answer as well. But I think for me, it's very simple. There are two things. One is just the overall understanding and acceptance that we all have our journeys, and I can do my part to support or facilitate something, but I can't control it, right? So the person who's wounded, and we all are wounded in different ways. So we have to go through our journey of, so just like you have to go through the discomfort, you have to go through the crisis mode and the painful mode to get to the healing mode. So I think just acknowledging that it's a process, and that it's not bad or it's not sign of weakness, or I think that's important. There is this term called empathic distress versus empathic concern. Have you heard of that?
No.
No, no.
What's the
Um,
difference?
so, em- so empathic distress is, this is the example that I love. If I see someone homeless on the street and I start looking for what can I, like, cash in my, do I have cash, or do I cross the road from here, or do I cross the somewhere else to miss it, and my thought is how I'm feeling. As a result, it's like me centered and it's causing me distress. Seeing that homeless person, be it guilt, be it sadness, be it,
Yeah.
whatever, then that's emotional distress. But if I can engage and be part of that interaction, interact with that homeless person, with putting his him first, so it's he's the focus. What can I do to help you? What would feel good to you? $5 might help him, That is empathic concern. And so I think we have to learn to cultivate that muscle to have greater empathic concern and not fall for empathic distress. Because I know I'm guilty of empathic distress, and it can burn out, and it actually becomes a reason to not engage. It can become a reason to not tend to the wounds. It can become a reason to not be curious and step into the discomfort. It can lead to a lot of, things. So that's
You know,
one.
that's and I just want to flag these words because they're just so powerful. I mean, just the word curious and the word discomfort,
Yeah.
you know, that if every one of us worked on that, on opening ourselves to be more curious
Yes.
and opened ourselves to tolerating more discomfort.
Ooh, let's do this. I love that you said it. But let's make it even more powerful. How about
Okay.
if we became more curious with our discomfort?
Whoa. All right. All right.
Ta-da!
So, yeah, because when I feel discomfort, my first impulse is to find a way to not feel discomfort, right? Like to make it stop, to distract myself, to be soothed in some way, right?
Yes.
So, instead, if I felt discomfort in one of these courageous conversations, right? And then I said to myself, huh, isn't it interesting how uncomfortable I feel right now? Like
Yeah.
just that like being a reporter about my own experience
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Totally.
the behaviors and yeah, and the ways that other people are
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What's underneath that discomfort?
Mm,
You know, I think it's important to name it, because until you, it's like, if once you put light on something, it's not so scary anymore. But
yes.
until it's lurking in the shadows, it's like it has the the possibility of being bigger and scarier and more dangerous than it really
Hmm.
is. So that's why being curious with the discomfort is so important.
I feel like that's a great sentence for us to hold on to from tonight. You know,
Aww.
it is a time of
Woohoo.
discomfort. It's a time
It is.
where as I said before, I think a lot of people are feeling like it's impossible to understand each other.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that your response is that it's not impossible.
It's no. It's courageous. We have to be
Mm-hmm.
willing. We have to be intentional about it, but it's definitely not impossible. Differences have always existed. Even within our
Mm-hmm.
families, big differences exist. But we find a way to not just tolerate, but to be with one another in ways that work for us. So it is definitely possible. We just have to be willing to look at it. And the second part I'll say, in terms of what's needed as well as what will help with the rejection part, is acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is different than acceptance, but also acknowledgement is different than awareness. To me, awareness is, I'm aware I'm in this room using this method, to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledgement would be, um, you know, like, what is the experience like for me to be in this room or to be in this conversation? That's acknowledging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to acknowledge you as the person who invited me, is different than accepting or agreeing with you. You know,
Yeah, I was
um,
struck by a word that you said a few minutes ago. I think it's terrible to feel only tolerated.
yes,
I don't want to be tolerated.
no,
That's I
no,
mean that does not sound like a
yeah,
life-giving a
No.
life-giving experience. I'll tolerate you. Oh, you're tolerating me. No, that's I feel like we must be
Exactly.
able to do better than that. Listen,
Exactly.
we're running low on time, but there's a whole nother realm in which you work, which is your individual life coaching. Can you just give all of us a quick example of 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 a way that you help an individual in a life coach setting, like
Yeah.
to open up something, just a little.
Yeah. I would just say it's a lot of what we've been talking about, but I'll take this one person in particular. Okay, I'll go with her. um, this is someone who she actually met me at the Women's Mosque of America, where I was giving the sermon in a religious context. So it wasn't even a coaching type thing, but we connected, and I was like, if you're interested, I can give you, we can do a complimentary thing, and then if you're interested, we can move forward. So at that moment of time when she connected with me, she was happily married. She was had a great job. So she was settled and she was unhappy, you know, and she was a survivor of gun violence. And so there was a lot that she was holding on to. And so as we got clearer on, like, we got more curious. We did the acknowledgement. We did the healing. So we weren't shaming the hurt. We weren't, there's something she named it, called it survivor guilt, and like how she saw the person next to her die, literally. And so she had a lot of survivor's guilt from that. This is Noor Jahan Bolton, by the way. And now is doing this work nationally to help other people of gun survivors of gun violence to really heal and to do it. And so the reason why she was able to make this transition from just living a life that was good in a container, like that checked off all the boxes, but wasn't in integrity with her spirit and purpose, is because she wasn't afraid, and even when she was afraid, she still embraced all of who she was. She embraced the pain, she embraced the guilt, she got clearer on what anchors her, what nourishes her, what grounds her. And we did that work together, so her relationships got better. And one of the best things that I remember, that really touched me, every now and then we talk about her as a mom and her relationship with her kids. And at some point she said, I used to teach my kids to be afraid. Don't do that, you will get hurt. Don't do that, you will die. Because, she was in that place of trauma herself. So she would protect her kids from that place. And now she was like, I don't say that to them anymore. And my son came to me the other day and said, Mom, I want to go, what was this, some sort of a jump thing that he did. And he was super scared of heights. And he was like, Mom, can I do it? Should I do it? And she was like, go for it. And she cheered him on. And, so her relationship with her kids has changed. So that's the power of really being true. And I guess I'll just say one last thing to wrap it up, is that if there's another word I love that grounds me, that nourishes me, that I strive for, it's authenticity. You have to be authentic to who you are, to your gifts, to your purpose, to your mission. And when you do that, it's so uncomfortable.
So uncomfortable. I didn't know that was what you were going to say. I thought you were going to say, it's so wonderful.
It is wonderful and it is so uncomfortable.
Wait, why is it uncomfortable to live into your gifts? I think because it's so risky.
It stretches you.
Yeah.
It stretches you. Whatever you thought you were okay with, you're no longer okay with, because you realize that you have more. Like, I was okay with just supporting the leaders. Then I was okay with becoming a leader. Then I had to become okay with becoming my own leader, like without a team, like having a job versus doing a business is very different. And having a business has been a spiritual, strengthening, challenging, crazy journey that I'm still on and figuring out, but
You mean your
I'm,
life coach, you mean the life coaching work that you do
yes,
now, on top of
yes,
all this other stuff that you do.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, bold. And so authenticity. And I suppose that life, when you work with a life coach like you, it's a way of discovering how to be your most
Yes,
authentic self, which I think
yes.
of as who God made you to be. Like to me, it's all this. It's
Exactly,
uncovering who God
exactly.
made you to be, makes you to be. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah. That's that's a nice place to end. But before we say goodbye, um, first I want to thank you for saying yes to me
Thank
tonight.
you. Thank
Thank you. It
you.
meant a lot to me when I asked you, and you wrote back and you said yes with like 5 exclamation marks. That was very thrilling. But what's something else you want to leave us with? One more little, um, just one more little something to think about in the days and weeks to come.
Um, I'd say embrace yourself, nourish yourself, and ground yourself in your own faith. Whatever you have faith in, really use that to envelop you and embrace you and to ground you, because I think this is a time in our country that we're all being called um, to be more authentic and to be more courageous and accepting of others' authenticity.
Mm.
And that work can be tricky, but if you're grounded and coming with curiosity and compassion and openness while being grounded, it is definitely possible. And not only is it possible, we need each other.
Mm-hmm.
We need each other to be this way and to be the stronger voice than the ones who are blinded or
Mm-hmm.
distracted by whatever it is that their agendas are, or their, you know, yeah,
So
all of
those
that.
folks like in New Ground, the Muslims and Jews who found their way into willingness to have the
Yeah.
conversation, there's such power, isn't there, in
Mm-hmm.
that in that in that initial curiosity to be able to
Yes.
start to engage.
Yes. Yes. The motto for New Ground, one of our values in New Ground, is curiosity over assumptions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Curiosity over assumptions. That
Yeah.
does sound like something that we can.
Yes.
Tasneem, thank you so much for
Aw,
tonight.
big hug
You're
to
such
you.
an amazing big hug to you. You're such an amazing
Right.
light source in this world. Thank
You.
you.
Thank you, Kate. I embrace you, I appreciate you, and thank you to all the people who asked their questions. And I look forward to whatever is ahead. And of course, they and
Yeah.
you can reach me
Yeah, let's cook
anytime.
something. Yeah, we'll cook something up.
Let's do
All
it.
right. Yeah, we'll do it.
Awesome.
Um, everyone, stay safe. Good night, and we'll see you next week. Bye.